Hi, and welcome everybody to Mindshifters Radio. Today is Tuesday, June the 2nd, 2026. And welcome to the show. And welcome, Michael. Hi, Bridget, Mitzi, Rex, Cami, Andrea, Alexandria. Good to see everybody.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here and looking forward to seeing what unfolds. And Lucia has joined us. Welcome, young lady. Glad to see everybody's sweet faces and know that you're with us. Yesterday, we had an opening conversation on the PowerPerson dynamic. And so what I've decided to do today, instead of stepping into questions, is start right out and kind of go over that dynamic. This is sort of the foundation of the codependence to interdependence intensive, actually codependence to interdependence communication uh, practicum that's available on the website if somebody is ready to go for the next level of it all. But basically, the power person dynamic we talked about yesterday is one that literally runs the world. I started to say that yesterday, that it it runs every business, it runs every church, it runs every government, it runs virtually every family, every community is run by this dynamic. And as far as I know, this dynamic has been absolutely unknown until about 30 years ago when I was driving up to do a weekend workshop called Codependence to Interdependence in Hartford City, Indiana. Actually, it was a place that for several years I had done a weekend intensive there. And we completed 1 year, and the folks who ran it said, well, you coming back next year? Or here's the date we've got. And I said, okay, sure. And they said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, codependence to interdependence, which is not a topic I had ever had anything to do with, had never thought about, but that's what came out of my mouth. The year went by, never thought about it. And the folks who ran the center, which were just this awesome, it was a Catholic retreat center, but the folks who ran it were just this sweet priest and nun that were so committed to supporting people really tapping into doing their work. I mean, they were Catholic officialdom, but they had nothing to do with the, it's all great to me aspect of it. Their whole process was that of supporting people in healing. And they said, this week, the week before the weekend we'd scheduled, they contacted me and said, hey, we're wide open this week. So if you got any extra time and you want to just come on up and have a few days of quiet time, come on up. So I did. And I got there and I checked in and I settled in and I wrote the whole codependence. There's only one piece of work that I've ever done that I could say was actually channeled, and that was it. I mean, I had no idea where it was going to go, but this whole workshop, of course, it's refined some since then, because that was probably, I'd have to look, but I think that was probably at least 30 years ago. But as far as I know, this dynamic has never been uncovered on the earth until now, and it runs the world. And of course, being that gigantic, why would anyone want to face and work through the power person dynamic? I mean, it is literally one of the most horrifically traumatic experiences on the planet for every child that goes through it. And that's just about everybody. So my offering is the reason why is because each time one plays out that dynamic, they reinforce, that is unconsciously just play it out. They reinforce and drive into tissue the whole physical, mental, emotional disease process playing out in their unconscious, which in that state, when one is locked into unconsciousness, we call the body. It literally shows up as what we call physical disease. Now, there's no such thing as a physical disease because there's no such thing as physical. If we plug Einstein, you can't get true healing unless you're living in the truth. So let's listen to Einstein for a moment and plug it in here. Einstein says this, on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, energy whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. So we don't have a physical body, But we do have an expression that we call physical that is nothing but a reflection of the energetic dynamics that we carry within us. And so this power person dynamic, each time it replays, goes in one of two directions. It drives unconsciously the disease energy further into tissue, or if committed support is available, it brings awareness, allowing the unconscious aspect of the mind to come out of hiding and heal. You know, remember Carl Jung's insight, and to me, if there are two human beings in particular that I would love to have had time to spend live in their field. One of them, of course, was Yeshua, and the other is Carl Jung. So remember, Carl Jung says this: until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. Now, the gestalt of the power person dynamic, which usually, though not always, happens between an unconscious parent and a child. I have seen situations where it's played out in other circumstances. I remember working with a gentleman who was in his 70s, and he was in a store when the store was being robbed, and they held a gun to his head, and the full power person dynamic played out for him. If we look at, for instance, what's happening in Gaza right now, you'll notice that what's being done to the Gazans is exactly what was being done to those who are perpetrating the Holocaust upon them. It's exactly the same. It's the power person dynamic playing out. It plays out on that large scale. And so it's not always a parent and a child, but usually. Short form, 3 conditions encountered by the perpetrator of the power person dynamic mostly comes from early childhood. And the 3 conditions that happen, the child experiences: 1, the parent has more power over the child than the child has. The parent is not, second condition, the parent is not functioning as a human being. The presence of breath and love are quelled within the parent, usually by hostility. The child experiences this circumstance as survival. In this situation, so once the child is put in a condition where those 3 dynamics happen, the child's field opens wide. I mean, literally, when you think of their physiology, their presence as being energy, it opens wide like a sponge, and with no filters, it absorbs and integrates every energy, spoken or unspoken, in the field into their physiology. From that moment forward, until the willingness to honor truth is engaged, and these acquired, usually generational energies, are forgiven, the child's behavior for life will be limited to 3 behaviors, and those behaviors will be determined not by choice in any way, shape, or form. The 3 behaviors, which I'll outline in a minute, may be overridden by an act of will instead of opening, facing, and healing. But if they're overridden by an act of will, that simply adds impetus, to the unconscious energy, and guarantees that sooner or later that behavior will, tragically, through the action of the automatic decision system, take on such intensity that it will take over, even in the face of resistance to it, and the demand to be played out will be executed. The next generation will knowingly or unknowingly be handed this plague, and it's the plague that, as I said earlier, runs humanity today. Playing this dynamic out over years usually earns someone in the culture. It's like kind of when somebody looks at a person, when they regularly play out, they live under enough stress that they regularly play out the power person dynamic. They're usually labeled something like, that person's just a pompous ass. That's kind of the label that they're given. Now, I add the idea of knowing and play it out because someone can be aware of the dynamic, but unless the commitment to honor truth is at a higher level than the level of denial, that person, even though aware of the power person dynamic, will play out the viciousness at the level of their power person and rationalize it's justified or even though the viciousness is in plain sight, they'll deny it ever happened. And the viciousness played out will usually be at about the level or maybe a little higher level than the power person displayed it. It might look like covert attack or just a low-life cheap shot that someone takes. But the commitment to play out that dynamic until uncovered, honestly looked at and healed is absolute. And the reason for that is because it's driven by an addiction that covers pain acquired when the individual who today is playing it out was subjected to it as a child themselves. I've heard many people over the years, once they've looked at it and started to deal with it, remember saying to themselves, I'll never do that when I grow up. But it will be compulsively played out until, and here are the things it takes to do it, until breath, willingness, responsibility, alignment, vitality, and love are sufficiently active to overcome the physiological resistance to the power person. In Aramaic, you remember that word is Satan. Satan is not the dude with the red seat, the tail, and the pitchfork. Satan in Aramaic means the resistor, one who misleads. When that physiological resistance and the breath held as an accompaniment of it takes over, then the power person dynamic formulates. It's almost like it presses out a construct that takes everything that's unconscious, massages it into making it look like what I went through with my power person when I was 4, now when I'm 50 is happening with this person who's in front of me today. And the mind will literally build a whole construct out of that unconscious dynamic that will put oneself in the place of the victim and the person present in the place of the abuser. And once again, the unconscious dynamic will play out and one will lash out with the viciousness of their power person. So that physiological resistance has to be overcome. And that is the product of the denial, dissociation, and projection underlying this generational pattern. Now, you remember, be acquainted with this work, that, the core tool this all started with, from Why Is This Happening to Me Again, is still a one-page worksheet. A lot of words on it. If you look at today's Why Is This Happening to Me Again forgiveness worksheet process, you'll notice that it's limited to one page. When you look at that today, you're probably looking at version probably at least 3,250. I don't know how many. There were days working on that worksheet where I would make significant changes to it 2 or 3 times in a day. And that's the core of what started this work. And the day that I wrote this original workshop for the workshop I was doing at John 23rd up in Hartford City, Indiana, 30 or so years ago, the Power Person worksheet was a one-page worksheet back then. And for the last, for 25 or better, more years, it was just a one-page worksheet. Then we did 2 back-to-back, and that's what constitutes the self-study that's available on our website, where we've put the 2 codependence to interdependence communication practicums together back-to-back. We did 2 of them, one in 2020, I think it was, and one in 2021. And we put them together to make an 89-hour video presentation of the Codependence to Interdependence communication tool. And they were each 14 weeks workshops. In the first 14-week workshop, the Power Person dynamic became more prominent, Power Person worksheet. And then in the second, we actually went, if I remember correctly, went from 14 weeks. It expanded out to 17 weeks. because the Power Person worksheet began to grow. It is now a 21-page worksheet. I think the one that's on the website currently is 19. We've been working with it some. We've been talking about actually doing it on the show, and maybe this will open the space for us to take the next level of doing the Power Person worksheet on the show. But that 19-page worksheet, I've been working on it somewhat over the last couple of weeks, and it's now 21 pages. But the basic dynamic underlying it all is that to the child, that parent is a god. The Power Person dynamic takes over when the automatic decision system prompt to the artificial intelligence system we call carbon-based memory is, inflict this on the object of your attention, and you will be God. Because the child who is subject to this dynamic with a parent, now the adult, the stress is up and the chips are down. There are only 3 behaviors possible. And the 3 behaviors are determined by the level of stress they're under. If there's, and just notice, you'll be able to tell if this operates in your life. Notice if when there's little or no stress, your behavior is that which you did when you got getting along with your Power Person. Maybe the way you coped with them was you always had to do it right. You were Mr. or Ms. Nice guy and took care of everybody. That might be what it looked like. So in a normal situation where there's little or no stress, this whole dynamic is driven by stress. And that's one of the reasons why the worksheet process is so important. You can look all around the world at all the stress workshops you want to find, and you won't find anybody can tell you what causes stress. They'll tell you, well, you're just in a stressful situation. There is no such thing as a stressful situation. It doesn't exist. You'll notice there are rooms where there were 10 people, and 9 of the people went berserk, and one of them sat there and went, what's going on here? Nothing. What was the difference between the 9 and the one who had no response? The one who had no response had no goals operating their mind. Load a goal into your mind and you increase your stress, which is a wonderful thing. Without stress, you'd be dead. It's a necessary thing. But if you move up the ladder to stress levels that the mind cannot handle, that's when you start to proceed deeper into this Power Person dynamic. So let's say there's little or no stress in this person. And this often happens, say, for instance, in a marriage. People are attracted to each other. He's Mr. Ms. Nice Guy. She's Mr. Ms. Nice Guy. And they get along, and it's wonderful. And they're together for 5 years, and everything's fabulous. But then, a baby comes along, the job stress happens, stress starts to build, and all of a sudden, he looks at her or she looks at him and says, what the hell happened here? What are you doing? You're Mr. or Ms. Nice Guy. And if that person's next level of behavior with their Power Person, that is, when they've gone from little or no stress to elevated stress, that is, they've loaded more goals in their mind. You got a baby to take care of, you got a job, you got a relationship, you got 5 years, you got a mortgage, stress is moving upward. If one moves to that next level of stress, then they move to the next level of expression of the Power Person dynamic. And that looks like the automatic decision system kicks in and prompts them, you might say forces them to do whatever they did to resist and survive with their Power Person. So maybe little or no stress, it was Mr. Ms. Nice Guy. But the way they resisted and survived with their Power Person was to become snarky. So all of a sudden, these 2 people have been together for 5 years, and all of a sudden, either he or she becomes Mr. or Ms. Snarky. And the partner looks at him and says, well, what happened? You're Mr. or Ms. Nice Guy. Why are you being Mr. or Ms. Snarky now? Well, I'm not. It's your fault. And there'll be a whole story about why the problem is outside of them, the denial, dissociation, projection. They won't talk about themselves. They'll talk about the cause of the problem, which is, always outside of them, because part and parcel of this development of the Power Person dynamic is that we each become indoctrinated into becoming card-carrying members of one world universal religion of blame. So the conversation, whenever stress is up and the chips are down, one will turn to projections that have them looking outside of them for the cause of what's moving inside of them. At that stage, if one would simply shift from the conversation about who's on the outside to what's going on in the inside, resolution would begin to occur like that. But for most people, that doesn't happen. So now we've got, the stress is up and it's Mr. and Miss Snarky. And then the third level of behavior, which is where this really strikes home and becomes traumatic, is that when one becomes ultra stressed, the automatic decision system will kick in and it will force them to do what their power person did to them that they hated the most. Period. Without question. And the underlying dynamic of that is that to the child, the person who's now at the age of whatever, playing this power person dynamic out within their home, within their community, within their business, within their church, whatever it is, within their political organization. When they were a child, to them, their parent was a god. When the automatic decision system prompt to the artificial system of carbon-based memory says, inflict this on the object of your attention, you're tricked into believing that being able to do to the person in front of you what your power person did to you that allowed them to control and win over you is the way you become the winner in this situation. That's the bottom line I would offer of what drives the whole dynamic. So tricked into believing that this is true power, the thought disorder that helps keep this oppressive, destructive power person dynamic in play generation after generation is, if I could just successfully inflict that wound on you that my power person oppressed me with and force you to surrender without me having to look at and deal with the dissociated trauma from that dynamic operating in me, I am now God. I am the one with the supreme power. And it's often languaged unconsciously as, I am or I want to be the king or the queen. And that's the way the mind sums it up. Now, all the while, the source of this twisted thinking is in reality the deepest dissociated familial disease energy. It's been going on one generation after the other, and it's one of the trickiest, most subtle and difficult energies to see through and heal, because it's born of the deepest wound. That wound was that of being rejected and abused by the person that's supposed to be there like a rock for us. Hostility in this case is one of the driving factors. And you've got to recognize that hostility, as we talked about yesterday, is a drug. It's an addictive drug. And, if you take a look at, you look into, for instance, the AA system, it is well known that the addictive personality is the subtlest, snakiest, sneakiest, most brilliant device there is at turning things around and making it look like it's everybody else's fault. And because it's an addiction, and it's been well proven in the alcohol field, if you are addicted to alcohol, you can be a user. Period. And hostility, I have suggested over the years, many times over the decades, that people start hostilities anonymous groups within their communities, because hostility is exactly the same thing. And if you are an hostility addict, one of the first commitments you have to make is that of stopping using. Now, it's a tough addiction to break because, well, at least with alcohol, you can say, I didn't go to the liquor store. I don't have any in the house. So if the stress is up and the chips are down and the drive to use is there, it's not available. The toughest part of this addiction is that hostility is an internally produced drug. You can't just say, I don't have any in the cupboard. So it's a tough one. So support will look like reflecting the underlying dissociated false beliefs, exposing the lies of the mind, replacing the projected rationalization with an unconscious direct replay of the disease process that brings awareness of what one, through the attack that seems to be against the object of attention. It seems like, when this is up in me, I'm attacking you. But remember, I get the original. What are the key lines in the worksheet? I get the original. They just get the carbon copy. You can't do it. Why do you want to carbon? Because you can't do it to somebody else without driving your own physiological disease in deeper. To me, that's where willingness is born. Willingness to listen, willing to drop the defenses, willingness to drop the brilliant blame stories you've got about how it's always somebody else's fault. Every attack that's made appears to be being made against someone else is an attack against self. So it's important to catch yourself or have someone with the care, concern, and willingness, and be careful of your propensity to take their head off, to use the viciousness that matches your power person on them. Remember, these are people that care for you, that they can inform you that you're delivering that energy, and to recognize the signs, holding breath, hostility. It's time to breathe into that and let the breath become the mentor. Let your breath become the source of the salve that dissolves this wound that is so deep. If you were able to go back and interview mom and dad, I guarantee mom and dad had a power person wound. And if you interviewed grandmother and grandfather on mom's side, grandmother and grandfather on dad's side, all four of them had the power person wound. And if you went to great-grandparents, all 16 of them had the power person wound. And if you went to the next and the next and the next, you'd find it there. And that's the place to breathe and recognize that every new level of vitality means that now I can now access, surface, and forgive what I have, and quite likely my generations have hidden from ourselves through denial. Remember, denial, thinking or speaking as though what's happening inside of me is caused by something outside of me. That I stop and I change the conversation. And I recognize, one of the other things I think that needs to happen for people who are inflicted with this disease, and I'm saying this from experience because I've been inflicted with it. One of the big turning points for me was the day that I realized that hostility is a mental illness. And that if my mind went into hostility, I was suffering from a mental illness. Now, my mental illness could make it all about you and everybody else. But if I'm in hostility, I have a mental illness. And the first order business is to clean up my mental illness. Because if I have that mental illness of hostility, I'm anesthetizing against something painful that's hidden in my unconscious. And the hostility only comes up when that which is painful in my unconscious is resonated. But what happens is, through that hostility filter, everything that's resonating from within is massaged, twisted, and turned into looking like something outside of me. Now, when I play that game, I create an unnatural condition called the unconscious mind. And whatever I hide from myself through denial literally chases me everywhere I go. Now, you might remember how many times you've said to yourself, why is this happening to me again? Or maybe you've varied the title of my book. We get people calling the center looking for the book all the time. And I understand you got this book. Why are they doing this to me again? Or why am I doing this to myself again? Again, recognize Carl Jung, until the unconscious becomes conscious. And everyone carries that wound. Now, there's only one person on planet Earth that knew And I'm talking only one in all of history, and I've spent better than half a century searching everything. I've been to China, I've been to Tibet, I've been to India. I've searched everywhere into everything I could find. There's only one person on planet Earth that knew how to remedy that situation. We don't have to make up legends and stories about this guy. We just have to look at the truth that he was an actual physician. No, he was not a miracle worker. Remember, he said the things I do, you too can do, and greater. He wasn't working miracles. He simply knew exactly how the human energy system worked. No one else in all of history has ever had the understanding nor the tools to repair virtually every human on the planet. And the tool appears in the first century Aramaic words of Yeshua. And the way that that dynamic is dissolved, of course, is through all of the tools. There's a quote in the book of Thomas that says, there's a light within a man of light, and it gives light to the whole world. If it does not give light, there is darkness. If there is darkness, it's time to take a breath and engage in forgiveness, because that's how the light is revealed again. I love how Rumi, 13th century Sufi mystic, said it. He said, love is the cure. Your pain will give birth to more pain until your eyes exhale love as effortlessly as your body yields its sense. Owning, feeling, talking about yourself instead of someone else, and working through what generations of rage, blame, loss, hatred, suffering, vengeance, and death, working through that, it's not Dr. Feelgood. So there will be healing crisis. And when the healing crisis begins, most people turn back to their mental illness. They pull out their membership card of the one world universal religion of blame. They play the blame, the guilt, the shame, the suffering, the victimhood. If you've never been in a really expert place that shows you how to deal with those dynamics in a relationship, go become a member of Al-Anon. Al-Anon's played this game out in the alcohol world, the drug world for decades, and they know how this game is played and how to arm yourself in order to heal if you are the object of that. Because the mind in addiction is a master at convincing everybody else that they're the reason. That is, that everybody else is the reason that this person's in pain. Until one awakens, the perceptual mind always projects its denied content. It turns it into images we think we see out there with our eyes, but in fact, and fortunately, there's a great line in the Course of Miracles that says, you think the problem's outside of you, and if it were, you'd really be in trouble. But you're blessed by the fact that the problem is inside of you, and that makes it changeable. That makes it healable. But those perceptions, those pictures literally that we think we see with our eyes, we've never seen anything with our eyes. The eye is a one-way valve. You can't see out of it. The eye brings in information carried on light. The carrier wave is light, and that information resonates what's in one's brain cell structure, one's own mind, and what resonates in one's brain cell structure generates images that are created by the brain, not seen by the eye, but projected on the inside of our eyeballs. Now, the person who's lived their lives in projection, always blaming others, to heal must do the grueling work. And, it's unnecessary that it's grueling, but it's self-inflicted by resistance and unwillingness. They've got to rebuild their own personal code until the automatic decision system is free to blame, and regardless of what is pointed at them, regardless of what anyone does. Their personal code guides them into this, and I'd like to offer the tool that comes from our Healing Through Relationships workshop, and I offer this to each of you. My commitment, I promise to trust you enough to tell you the truth, to be true to you, and always engage in just and fair behavior with you. I commit to always be sweetness in your life, to nurture you daily and treat you lovingly, gently, and with respect in my thoughts, my words, and actions, whether in your presence or not. In every interaction, I commit to affection for you, to look for and acknowledge the highest and best in you, and as I surrender to love, our true nature, I will use only voice tones that reflect my deep caring for you. My connection to love, our source, gratitude for my relationship with you, and our serenity will always be more important than any issue. I open my being to embrace you in my love. I open my being to be embraced in your love. If anything unlike love comes up in me, I will hold this in my heart and listen as I learn to speak, experience, and be responsible for as I forgive my own projected realities. I'm here for and with you. I promise to speak only truth to you as I keep communication open and keep love conscious, active, and present. As we heal, celebrate life, and grow together. So for me, that's what grew out of our show yesterday. And I do this in the spirit of moving forward into the PowerPerson worksheet. And as I said, I've been doing some work on it. And if you'd like to get the latest copy of it, if you would just drop Jeannie an email at jeanie@whyagain.org, jeanie@whyagain.org, and just say, can I have a copy of the PowerPerson worksheet? I'm going to do a few refinements on it in the next day or two, and we'll get it sent out to you and plan to start it on the show. I assume there are probably going to be some questions or thoughts, so I'm going to open the floor and say, did that make sense? What are your thoughts? What's your feedback? Miss Jeannie, go for it, sweetheart.
You actually changed the next to the last paragraph, and
Yes.
it reads, if anything I have committed to here sounds hollow, or anything
Yes.
unlike love comes up in me, I will hold this in my heart and listen as I learn to give up denial and projection and learn to speak, experience, and be responsible for and forgive my own realities.
Yes. Thank you,
And
sweetheart.
I put a link to that, and I also put a link to the 19-page worksheet in the notes.
And that change happened as a result of a situation that happened between Jeannie and I. And I realized that I was not quite living up to what the earlier part of the commitment has said. And and I had to acknowledge that it sounded hollow. And so that's a piece. If you look at the commitment, you can look at all the issues I've been working through in my life. It's all autobiographical. And so, take it as a foundation, throw it away if it doesn't make sense to you. But if it makes sense as a foundation, add your own pieces to it. Any pieces of it that you find that, if we put this in, it takes me to another level, please drop me a note and I'll look at it for inclusion. Some of this is that commitment has come strictly from what I've been doing, especially in the arena of my own personal work and healing through relationships and the codependence work. But some of it's come from feedback with others too. So thank you, Jeannie, for bringing that in. I had done this from some notes I had, and it's the previous version of the commitment I had. So I'll make sure to update it. Thank you, sweetheart. So welcome to Mindshifters Radio. Terry Bowling, you've got your hand up, good sir. Say hello.
Hello.
Hey, how you be?
Hey,
I see your
right.
picture there outstanding in your field.
Yeah, and this today's show is just so right on track for me. So going through my process here and all, and I touched on some Hawkins stuff a little bit. There's something registered about anger, shame, guilt, and those levels, so to speak,
Right.
And so as I was doing some worksheets and some processing, I realized, okay, well, the shame and guilt definitely came before anger. I'd never really just thought about it, and
Right.
and then thinking about, okay, being in the womb, and knowing now what violence and all was going on, and what
That your mother was subjected to and your father. Yeah.
yeah, all that violence going on, and then me absorbing that energy. Well,
Yeah.
who knows, I don't know how that was perceived. Of course, it doesn't matter. There was just
Sure.
negative energies that were bombarding me in the womb, and then coming out into this firestorm, so to speak, over there. And as I grew, what I realized was that I've been punishing. I've been my own power person now.
Oh.
Now, this is an idea, a concept. Just like, wait a minute, I've been doing this to myself now, with the guilt and the shame that I've been carrying around. One, being born into that family dynamic, just being born into it
Right.
has been a big load, and the emotions are coming up now. And
Breathing with you, my friend.
and the shame that went along with that, deep shame. And then as things unfolded, the files start to open. And thank you for reading that commitment. It just took me right back to Heartland, and we got to hear it dozens of times of people sharing it with each other and just doing it in the mirror and all that, and it really takes a lot of effort. And I thank God, Spirit, Yeshua, for giving me the willingness, instilling the willingness in me just to do that on such a long-term, continuous basis, even though, I'd go underground for a while here and there. It was still present. But that piece opened up an understanding about the guilt and the shame, and how I have punished myself for all my life, up until now. I've been still.
Yeah, if the power person isn't there to do it, you'll do it yourself.
Exactly. They passed on.
Yep.
I've done all my work around them, blah, 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 blah. Well, damn it, I'm the power person.
Yeah.
And I'm abusing myself. And it's freeing, but it's also horrifying at the same time. It's unsettling, and all kinds of energies around it that could take place, for so long and be hidden in plain sight. And I'm grateful and excited about coming to that understanding, realization, and seeing that. And there's just so much to go through that. I don't know. I'll get into all that. It's like the things that happened and impressed that and pushed it in, and how it's like, okay. And so put my name on the list to get that revised 19-page sheet. When I think you said it's 40 pages now. Yeah. Okay. So
no, it'll probably end up being 40 pages.
Yeah, I would like a copy as soon as it comes off the press. Okay.
I mean, why is this happening to me again? The forgiveness process, again, that's at least version 3040. The Codependence, or pardon me, the PowerPerson worksheet, it's only at version maybe 14 now, so it is sure to grow as we work with it more. And the thought comes that some people think I'm kind of being facetious and it's a tongue-in-cheek statement, but I really seriously mean it. And you've heard me say it 1,000 times. In order to heal, you got to be out of your mind. The mind is the home of a million stories, each one of them so convincing because it generates these artificial intelligence images that look so real. And they must be outside of me because I can see them through my eyes. when I realize that they are all painted on the inside of my eyeballs and that I can remove them, that's when the healing begins. Otherwise, I will continue to believe it's outside of me and it's being done to me again, when in fact, it's internally not only projected, but perpetrated. So thank you
Yes,
for bringing that up.
imposed. Yeah, and so here's another little sidebar. So it's like day 10 of this healing crisis. Okay, since my rain dance, and
Right.
I've literally lost about 4 inches off my waist.
Wow.
Where with the
I've watched that
purging and
dance
the
2 or 3
processing
times
that's
since you
been
shared
going
it with
on.
me.
Yes,
It's fun to watch you do that,
I'm
Jerry.
just not. It's like just riding the wave here, and this is the longest, most protracted. It's tapering off, a little bit each day, but what a I don't, and I'm not trying to shut it down. It's like, okay, let's just ride this wave as long as we can. See what really happens here.
Mm.
With the
Well, and
cleansing.
you just verified, when I started out, I said, why would somebody want to face the power person dynamic? And notice as you faced it, you just said 4 inches has come off your waist. That's 4 inches of trauma taken out of your tissue structure from the willingness to face what's going on. That's what healing looks like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Been locked in my gut forever until now.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, holding the space, my friend.
Thank you.
Last night, Jeannie and I watched an interesting film. It's called Safe Haven. And one of the lines in the movie was, and it hit me strong enough that I wrote it down. If your mind is always moving, how do you get your heart up off the ground? You got to be out of your mind. And I haven't had a chance to share this with Jeannie yet, but it's basically a movie about a woman who's been pretty severely abused by her husband, which, from 16 to 19, that's the topic of Jeannie's book on healing generations one breath at a time. She went through that. So several times we both took on the reminder to breathe as we were watching this fairly graphic film unfold. And afterward, as I went into breathing, we shut the TV off, went to sleep, and went into breathing. And, our last request when we watch something like that at night is always, Ruka, whatever this has resonated in us, please clean it up as we sleep and breathe. And so I was kind of in a space with Jeannie of empathizing with what you, sweetheart, have been through with that 3 years of extreme mental, physical, emotional, sexual, financial abuse, and saying thank you for the fact that I'd never had to experience that kind of abuse. And then the next breath, what came, and I've shared especially over the last 2 years or so, several layers of healing with regard to my father. And another, as I kind of silently said that to Jeannie last night, what came up as well, Michael, you actually have experienced that. That's what went with Dad, and some memories of some pretty severe physical abuse came up there. So open the space for another layer to move for me today, and that's part of what inspired me to do this particular piece of the puzzle today. So thank you for sharing that, Terry. That's powerful. Holding the space. Any other thoughts for you, sir? Okay, cool.
I'm good.
All right, well,
I'm good.
okay, cool. Miss Lucy, how are you, young lady?
Hello. Well,
Welcome.
I'm as usual in healing crisis,
Mm,
Yeah, well, I guess
breathing with you.
that's how it goes for me, right? Like Friday, I had such an awesome day, and it's classic of genre. Next day, it started. I'm okay. I feel much stronger than some years ago to go through that. And if I didn't hear Terry correctly, I don't want you to correct it. So I say that I was convinced that I really need to do PowerPerson worksheet to lose 4 inches of my waist. So that sounds great. So even if
Well,
you
we'll hold the space and see what
I'm like,
opens for you. That's great.
that's pretty convincing. So I actually was listening yesterday's show when Mitzi was talking about covered emotions, right? So we know how anger can cover something, some other emotion like fear or sadness maybe, and
Right.
and I've heard your answer, and I always thought exactly what you said, but some time ago, like maybe a year or two ago, I also came across theories that it could be the other way around. I mean, I'm not convinced either way. It's just a matter of research, everybody, individual research, opinions, and experiences.
Right.
So but what I want to say, yesterday doing my work, and it happened before. My thought, okay, I start with my thought. My thought is that possibly for people whose anger was suppressed, I mean, almost everybody's anger was suppressed when they were children. However, there are some personality traits, right? And some different person dynamics. And let's say I will be talking about maybe people who build up more like me. So it was suppressed so much that until maybe 6 years ago, I did not, I knew, just because I knew that as a human, I have anger. And because I have all the spectrum of emotions, right? But like I couldn't tap into clear anger. Like I would go to this, like, irritation and all that. And then I uncovered that. So I think, and I still tend to go rather in fear and more so in sadness and anxiety than anger. So yesterday, I was doing this work, like another wave of, healing crisis, and a lot of tears and sadness and and that was related to Elena. And I knew I'm going right direction.
Notice what's happening with your breath right now.
Well, noticed. It's still a subject.
Yeah. Well, but here's the point. Remember that if I'm looking at, dealing with an issue, and I'm withholding my breath, I'm dealing with that issue with only the intelligence of carbon-based memory. Higher intelligence is development doesn't touch that. When I bring the breath in, now I'm dealing it with a higher intelligence than the artificial intelligence of carbon-based memory.
Well, yes,
so that's why the reminder to breathe is there, to always keep that moving.
Since it's carbon-based in action, so it wasn't noticed right away.
Yes. Nothing like a little help from our friends.
Yes, thank you. And then some thoughts start surfacing, and that was the thoughts of anger related, resonated by some person behavior when Elena was little. It wasn't her, it was...
Right.
So anyway, I did a couple of worksheets around that. And the whole issue, layer of that issue was lifted. So what I'm saying is, this is, I didn't have access to that anger, no memory of that, no access,
right,
until I lifted that sadness. So I would love you to speak to that.
So here's my take. If you listen to the first words you spoke about how what I heard you describe was a new level of vitality that you had reached before all this happened. Yeah. A new level of vitality means that now I have access to a layer that yesterday I had no access to. And there it is in front of me. So, when I get to that point where all of a sudden, man, I feel so great. I'm so enlivened. I'm so empowered. I now have life handled. If there's anything left in the unconscious that needs to be dealt with, that new level of vitality is going to open the veil, and I'm going to have access to it and get the opportunity to work through it. And so it can look like anything it looks like.
So you're saying it's not because I lifted that layer of sadness and anger showed up. It just sort of independently, just because I was ready. Is it correct? So I'm talking about something else covering for me, for like, I don't know, my structure or whatever, covering anger. So not anger covers something, but something,
Right.
some other emotion cover anger. So
Right.
that I did not understand his answer.
Okay. So as I said yesterday, my take is that anger is in a different category. Anger, we have a lot of words that describe our emotions. A certain neuropeptide hits a cell, and the cell screams back with an emotion. My offering is we tend in the culture to put anger into that category, and my offering is anger is not in that category. Anger does not happen as a result of that, of a thought disorder, of a sin-based neuropeptide hitting a cell and giving us feedback, sadness, grief, fear, whatever, giving us that emotional feedback. But anger is the internal, when there's something moving. Now, this is just my take, and take it for what it's worth from observing, is that anger's not an emotion. It's in a different category. It is literally an internally produced drug. When there's something I don't want to look at, something I don't want to feel, I will generate this chemical condition that produces an anesthetic effect. And I'm not going to have to feel that. Now, that can be layered in with a dozen other emotions. And so I might unstack, I unstack my fear, my sadness, my grief. Oh, there's some rage. And then when I let go of the rage, I just expose myself to the next level of grief. And then when I process through that level of grief, oh, there's more rage. It wasn't that the grief was covering the rage. I'm unstacking things. My take is that from a biochemical point of view, anger is in a different category than emotions. That's just my best understanding.
Okay. Well, also you're talking about anger as a mental illness. I would say suppressed anger, it's definitely mental illness, because it looks like it led me that time, accumulation of years of suppressed anger, which I did not even know. I just understand. I
Right.
remember something from childhood, but then adult life, I didn't even know that I'm doing that. And that actually led to some, I would say, I call it soul disorders, but it's probably mental, so like depression, like anxiety and panic attacks. And when at first I uncovered these angers, I became very unpleasant to some people who knew me different.
You weren't fun to be around at the moment.
I know. I warned close to me people, but still. So, but I would say my healing started that mental illness, like suppressed anger, was revealed. So
Yeah, my take is whether it's suppressed or expressed anger doesn't matter. It's mental illness. If you ask people, this is a question that in the Why workshop we have been doing for years, and invariably when we say to people, "Have you ever done anything you regret?" Everybody kind of smiles and puts their hand up in the audience. Yeah. What were you feeling? What was the state of your mind when you did what you now regret having done? And the most common answer was hostility in one of its forms. So if hostility is the operative energy when I'm doing things I regret, obviously I'm mentally deficient in that place. And so whether it's suppressed or expressed anger, I don't think matters. It is a mental illness. We're not in our right minds. And at that moment, to take a breath creates the dissolution of the internally generated anesthetic removes it and frees us from it, would be my take.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Michael.
Any other thoughts for you?
Lucia,
Thank you. Now I need to digest. Yes, yes.
Okay, well, we'll breathe and digest it with you.
Thank you.
well,
All
I
right.
did, Michael, I know you're winding down, and real quick, I just wanted to
Yes.
offer. Thank you, Lucia, for bringing that back up again, because I processed that quite a bit as well with Mitzi and what she had shared. And Michael, I came to the same place. I think it seems like I'm in the same place you are. I loved your explanation of anger and rage, and it's not an emotion. I'm in agreement with that. Um, the part that I came to was like what you said at the end there. And I think it can get confusing because it is layered, you know, and the layers look like this is covering up that. But it's actually like you were describing. That's what I got yesterday as I processed it and just hung out with it, is that when anger is present, definitely in anesthesia, it's a drug, it's a chemical we dump to hide whatever it is we're dealing with inside from us, or whatever version we've made up about it. And then once I go to that, allow that to integrate, do what I need to allow that to change, I step into the sadness or the fear or whatever was underneath it, or that I was hiding from myself, more accurately. And then quite often there's another layer, like you said, and I had shared this with Mitzi. I said that I think it's going to be tempered by the vitality, and that'll be what Michael would say anyway. And you did today. I thought I heard you say that. But the vitality determines how deep we go into the system of layering. And I think it's
Yes.
important, Lucia, to acknowledge what you were saying as well. And I did hear Michael say that, but I wanted to say it in my language. And that was that you appear to be seeing that and seeing the layers as you're unfolding it. Is that pretty accurate, Michael?
Sounds okay to me.
Right on.
The
brother.
only input I would have is remember the whole cycle of denial, dissociation, and projection happens when I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me. So when I say it's confusing, I'm giving something outside of me the power to create my confusion, as opposed to, oh, when that happens, I have confusion come up. Now I've given my mind permission to show me my confusion rather than projecting it on whatever the it is, and I get to resolve things at the next level. That would be my only feedback on what you said. So,
How would
yay.
thank you. How would I say that consciously? Say it again.
Consciously would be, well, when I think about that, confusion comes up for me.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So now I'm saying to my mind, as opposed to saying to my mind, it's confusing. See, that out there causes my confusion. That's what it communicates to the mind. Therefore, I have to make up a whole story and dissociate from my own confusion, where the other language gives my mind from, gee, here I have confusion come up when I think about that. My mind says, oh, I can show you the root of your confusion and we can work through it.
Right
So
on.
one place is denial, dissociation, projection. The other place is responsibility and healing. That would be my
Very
take.
helpful. Thanks.
Cool. Awesome.
All right, buddy.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have the best year yet of your eternal lives. And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And we will get started on that